Have you ever asked yourself, what do you have in your hands? This seemingly simple question carries a profound depth of meaning. It's not merely about the physical objects we clutch, but rather it's an exploration of the gifts, talents, and resources with which we've been entrusted. Let's delve into the metaphorical significance of this question. Picture your hands as a representation of your capabilities, your potential, your influence. Now consider, what are you doing with these? Are you nurturing your talents, utilizing your resources, and exercising your influence to bring about positive change? Or are you letting these gifts lay dormant, untouched by the light of purpose and action? The literal interpretation of the question is no less important. The things we physically hold in our hands are often the tools we use to interact with the world. These could be as simple as a pen that scribes inspiring words, a brush that paints a masterpiece, or a hammer that builds a home. They could also be as complex as a computer that develops software, a stethoscope that diagnoses ailments, or a camera that captures the beauty of creation. In both senses, the question, "What do you have in your hands?" is an invitation to recognize and appreciate the resources we have been given, and to contemplate how we can use them for greater purposes. It's a call to acknowledge that we are vessels of potential, capable of impacting the world in ways that reflect the glory of God. Now, why is this question so significant? Because the answer to it has the power to transform our lives and the lives of those around us. By identifying what we hold in our hands, we unlock the door to purpose, fulfillment, and service. We step into the role of co-creators with God, using what we have to contribute to His grand design. The answer to this question can be a life-changing revelation. Let's dive into an ancient story to find out more. In the Book of Kings, we find an intriguing tale of a widow and the prophet Elijah. This is a story that paints a vivid picture of faith and provision, even in the face of seeming lack. In the heart of a severe drought, the prophet Elijah is guided by the Lord to a widow in the city of Zarephath. Upon his arrival, he finds the widow gathering sticks, preparing to make what she believes to be her last meal with a handful of flour and a little oil. Elijah, however, presents her with a request that seems counterintuitive at best and at worst utterly absurd. He asks her to first make a small cake for him, and then use what's left to prepare for herself and her son. Now, the widow could have dismissed Elijah's request as the ramblings of an out-of-touch prophet, yet she didn't. Despite her dire circumstances, she chose to use the little she had in service of another. In this act of faith and obedience, she found that her jar of flour and jug of oil did not run dry, providing sustenance for her, her son, and Elijah throughout the drought. This story stands as a profound testament to the power of what we hold in our hands, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem. The widow's meager supply of flour and oil could easily have been dismissed as insufficient, yet in her hands and through her faith, it became a resource that sustained life in a time of desperate need. In the same vein, we are often quick to underestimate the value of what we hold in our hands. We overlook the potential of our resources, our talents, and even our time, simply because we deem them too small or insignificant. But as the story of the widow and Elijah illustrates, it's not about the size of what we have, but rather how we choose to use it. In the hands of the widow, a little oil and flour became a tool for survival and a testament of faith. You might be wondering, how does this ancient story relate to us today? Well, my friends, the story of the widow and Elijah is not just a tale from the past, but a mirror reflecting our lives today. Just like the widow, each one of us is holding something in our hands. It could be a talent, a skill, or a resource, perhaps even time. And much like the widow, we often underestimate what we hold. We don't see the potential in our hands because we compare it with what others have. We look at our small jar of flour and jug of oil and think, what can I possibly do with this? But remember, the widow's little was able to sustain her and her son through a severe famine. Her willingness to use what she had, no matter how small, made a significant difference. She chose to share her last meal with Elijah, and in return her jar of flour and jug of oil never ran out. It was her act of faith and her willingness to give that activated the miracle. In the same way, our talents, abilities, resources, and time are not insignificant. They are the flour and oil in our hands. Each one of us holds the potential to create, inspire, help, and make a difference in our own unique ways. All it takes is a willingness to use what we have. When we choose to use our abilities, no matter how small they may seem, we open up the possibility for God to work miracles through us. God can take our little and make it much. He can use our talents and resources in ways we could never imagine. So let's not belittle what we have in our hands. Let's not hold back from using our talents, abilities, resources, and time. Let's be willing to give. Just like the widow, let's activate our own miracles. Just like the widow, we all have something in our hands that God can use in miraculous ways. So what is in your hands? In the quiet moments of reflection, when you pause and consider your life, what can you identify in your hands? Perhaps it's a talent, a skill, or a resource. Maybe it's something as simple as time or kindness, the ability to listen or to speak words of encouragement. Whatever it is, it's something uniquely yours, given to you for a purpose. You see, the beauty of the story we've just explored is not just in the miraculous provision. It's in the widow's willingness to offer what little she had, her act of faith, and her trust in God's promise. She had only a small jar of oil, but she gave it willingly. And in return, she received far more than she could ever have imagined. In the same way, we're invited to offer what we have, no matter how small it may seem. It's not about the size or the grandeur of what we have. It's about the willingness to use it for God's purposes. It's about the willingness to step out in faith, to trust in His promises, and to believe that He can use whatever we have for His glory. So ask yourself again, what is in my hands? It might be a talent you can use to serve others. It might be a resource you can share. It might be a word of encouragement you can offer to someone in need. Whatever it is, offer it willingly, offer it in faith, and watch as God multiplies it, just as He did with the widow's oil. Don't underestimate what God can do with what you have. Remember the loaves and fishes, the mustard seed of faith, the widow's mite. Each of these was small, but in God's hands, they became more than enough. Remember, it's not about how much you have, but how willing you are to use it for God's purposes. So I encourage you today, look at your hands. Recognize what you hold and offer it to God for His glory and His purposes. In conclusion, the question, what do you have in your hands, is not just a question, but a call to action. A call to reevaluate, to introspect, to recognize the resources, the talents, the gifts that lie within us. It's a call to utilize these gifts, not just for our personal gain, but for the glory of God. We've journeyed through the power that lies within our hands, drawing from the poignant encounter between the widow and Elijah. Remember, the widow had only a handful of flour and a little oil. It seemed insignificant, but when offered in faith and obedience, it sustained her and her son throughout the famine. This story wasn't just about physical sustenance, but a demonstration of God's providence and the power of faith. It was a testament to the fact that no matter how little we think we have in God's hands, it can be multiplied, it can bring forth abundance. The relevance of this story in our lives today is profound. Each one of us has something in our hands. It might be a skill, a talent, a resource, or even a simple act of kindness. No matter how small or insignificant it may seem, when used in service of others, it can create ripples of change. We've also discussed the call to action. It's not enough to just recognize what we have in our hands. We must be willing to use it, to offer it, to let God's work be done through it. The world is full of opportunities to serve, to give, to love. Each one of us can make a difference. So let us not underestimate the power that lies within our hands. Let us not overlook the opportunities to serve that surround us every day. Let us remember that every act of kindness, every word of encouragement, every talent utilized for good is a testament to God's love and grace. So take a moment, look at your hands and ask yourself, what do I have and how can I use it for God's glory?